It's time to spill the tea. Hello!
You there, and welcome to
A Spoonful of Theatre. And this is our podcast where we review a local Singapore theatre production right outside the theatre foyer. I'm TJ, theatre practitioner and director.
And I'm Sam, a teacher of language, literature, and self-proclaimed show business lovey. And we are reporting to you outside the Drama Centre Theatre. And what have we watched, TJ?
We have just watched Congratulations, Get Rich.
By who?
Which is by the Singapore Repertory Theatre, but also co-produced by Sydney Theatre Company and La Boite Theatre, I think is pronounced.
La Boite. Oh, you
which
need to improve your French, dear.
I learnt German at school. Anyways, these are both Australian theatre companies. Anyways, this production has been co-produced by, say, SRT and those Australian theatre companies, and it's just finished its run in Brisbane, I believe, and now they brought the production here to Singapore.
Splendid. So this is a collaboration.
It is. It's a collaboration, but it is a Singaporean playwright.
Right.
So it's a Singaporean show, but it's been produced in Australia and as well in Singapore.
Right.
So it's a very interesting setup that we have here.
Yes.
And we've just come out and watched it. So Sam, your first thoughts?
My first thoughts. TJ, I feel like I've gone on a journey where I don't know the origin nor the destination. And I don't mean that horribly. This is a piece of theatre that I don't gel with very much. Reason being, it's funny and surreal at the same time. And surreal comedy is not really my cup of tea. But also there is some serious aspects to it as well that I will just label as mother and daughters. And being a man, I cannot comment on the relationship between mothers and daughters, least of all mother and daughter relationships in Singapore. So I'm not the target audience for this kind of play. So it's a journey that I've been on that I didn't really enjoy the ride, if I'm being completely honest. What about you, TJ?
You say you're not the target audience, Sam. I don't know who the target audience is for this show. We'll get into that later. I'm pretty similar to you. I feel like I've been on a ride, possibly on a substance you're not allowed to have in Singapore. If I'm honest. I don't quite know like you said, I don't know where it started, I don't know where it went. It wasn't quite a musical, it wasn't quite a cabaret, it wasn't quite a play. For me, the show didn't land in any of those categories. And I left feeling I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be feeling. Yeah, it's a very interesting one for me, and I'm very excited to go through the show. So shall we start?
Yes, I want to start at story.
Yes.
And writing,
Yes.
because I think that is the core. I correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the core, the foundation, the start of any piece of theatre.
Yes.
And quite honestly, I felt the story was very incoherent. It was talking about one thing or going in one particular direction or focusing on one particular character or relationship, and then quick as a flash it went in a completely different direction. That if I was to give some advice as an audience member, sometimes when we go to the theatre, we want to have an easy ride. We don't want to think too much. We don't want to use our imaginations too much because it's right there on the stage. And sometimes my imagination had to work a little bit too hard. And that I feel comes down to the writing. So perhaps needed a little bit more workshopping or that kind of thing. What about you, TJ?
To be honest, I have the opposite opinion.
Oh.
That it was given to us too much, and it was too overly laboured. So there was a lot of because this was obviously written initially for a Australian audience, especially a lot of the Chinese references were over-explained through the show. So there was a lot of references to Chinese superstition, Chinese myths, and then you would follow that up very quickly with an explanation of why that is important to the story,
Yes.
which might definitely be needed in Australia where that's not common. But here in Singapore, for a Singaporean audience, this is the culture here. Even even if you're not Chinese, I knew quite a lot of those superstitions
Yes.
from having many of Chinese friends and being here for a long time. Yes, if I was new to Singapore, I would have probably needed the explanation. But here it's overly written for a local audience, and I don't think the local audience is going to appreciate Chinese culture 101 being over explained back
Spoon-fed to
to
them,
you.
yes.
Whereas if it was written for a Singaporean audience, it wouldn't need that explanation. And I think that's where that doesn't quite work when you're working with a Western theatre company and trying to bring that work that's presenting Asian work into Singapore theatre. Or maybe it didn't need quite explaining in the same way. So I think, again, it's a writing thing. And in general, it sometimes went very serious, but then it went straight into slapstick, which to me then goes into our next topic of kind of staging and direction. And that's where I feel it was constantly pushing and pulling, because at times it felt like almost a panto in it,
Yes.
or an over-the-top sitcom.
Yes, I agree with you
But
there.
then at times it went quite serious. And then suddenly in the serious moments we went into a hammy musical theatre number, which wasn't musical theatre, and I don't like to call it musical theatre because this wasn't a musical.
No.
Because the songs were a karaoke session, and sang in a karaoke style, and were a karaoke song, but they were maybe commenting on the story, but it wasn't advancing the story, so that is not a musical. So to me, it's just very confused, and just didn't sit in any sort of style.
I see what you mean by that, because I had a concern at the beginning with the acting and direction. I noticed a particular over-enunciation of words and an over-enunciation of language. What that did is that it made the interactions between the characters feel less authentic and less natural. And it's something I struggled with in the performance tonight.
I think if it all stayed in that world of panto-esque sort of thing, it wouldn't have been a problem. But when it tried to go a bit deep with that, then it really jarred as well. And you needed that authenticity, and it just didn't come through. So let's jump into the performances. For me, actually, I don't want to jump into any individual performance. I just felt with the style of the show, it was very hammy. And it came across quite hammy overall. And I didn't connect with any of the performances tonight throughout the entire show, unfortunately.
Fair enough.
And I will say, in terms of vocals, the show is about karaoke, and that came across as karaoke throughout the whole show in terms of singing quality. And I didn't particularly enjoy the vocals in the show. And one thing I particularly didn't enjoy while I'm on the vocals is the backing tracks felt very simple. Like there wasn't a band, so it felt very, I've made a backing track, and that I just didn't enjoy. But that is also karaoke, so maybe that was a choice because you get that in a karaoke bar as well.
Yes.
But that's not what I wanted to hear if I come to the theatre.
Yes. I did have some real laugh out loud moments. Sometimes at the expense of the cast, sometimes because it was genuinely funny. But if I was to say who was the most consistent tonight for me, it was Kimi Sukakoshi. I found her the most consistent in terms of her body language, in terms of her performance of her character. And she had the most laugh out loud moments for me. Just whilst I'm thinking about it, given what you've just said there, TJ, is this a show for the theatre?
Honestly, this to me is a show in its early workshop stages that needs 6 more workshops to kind of find its feet. It's something I might see at Edinburgh Fringe, which, not saying Fringe shows are bad in any way, that's not what I'm trying to say here, but it's a show that needs work. And I feel like it got lost in the Drama Centre Theatre as well. With the staging specifically, it was staged in a bit like the Wild Rice Theatre in Australia, but a smaller Blackbot version. So it was a bit of a thrust stage. So it was originally staged so that 3 people, like 3 sides, could view it. And then here in the Drama Centre, it's been staged front on, which does make it a challenge. And what I wanted to see from putting my director's hat on is them adapt that slightly for that proscenium art stage. And they kept the set exactly the same, which allowed a lot of back acting, which to me, when they brought it to Singapore, would have been easy to change for this stage. And I hope that the next few days, as they get into the run, that they edit some of that, because there was a lot of things that shouldn't have been I was getting a lot of actors' backs, and I didn't need it. And it's just the way that the stage was initially designed, and that is a challenge. But I think there's definitely things to edit there.
I think I agree with you. I got Edinburgh Fringe a few times watching the show tonight. I absolutely love the aesthetic of the set. I love that sort of karaoke room vibe that they had with the staging. However, in agreement with you, I did feel that the staging was somehow dwarfed by the Drama Centre's stage, in my opinion. Sound design, special effects, that kind of thing. What did you think of that?
Actually, there was a few problems tonight, and this sometimes happens early on in the run. There was a few microphones not staying on people's heads. Again, like I said earlier, some of the tracks I don't think were good enough quality. Some of the levels weren't leveled tonight for the sound effects as well.
For me, I felt the sound effects were a little too loud. If I had a weaker heart, I may have been a little bit surprised, and epilepsy as well with strobe effects and the rest of it. Yes, so sound effects and design, I think, needs tweaking.
Yeah.
Now then, ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, when TJ and I see a piece of theatre, we always give it a spoonful rating out of 5 spoonfuls. TJ and I, of course, never let each other know what spoonfuls we are going to give, and so you are about to find out the big reveal. Are you ready, TJ?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, 2.
1.
Ooh. Now, I think this might fall under the lowest rating we have given for a Singapore show.
I do believe so.
So, on that occasion, let's explain why. I will give it a 2 because I did laugh out loud. I did enjoy the aesthetic. I did enjoy some of the performance, not all. However, for me, it was the writing that was a misfire. I just did not know where the story was going or what was the meaning behind the story until the very end. So that's why it's a 2 for me. TJ, you're a 1.
I am a 1, and I have to be honest, and the whole reason we do this podcast is to share our opinions and to share our thoughts. And actually, the bigger reason we do this podcast is to lift up local theatre and to celebrate local theatre. And for me, SRT does such amazing work throughout the year. This just feels like a complete offshoot that just isn't innately SRT. And I think that is because we are collaborating with other people, and it just doesn't gel in Singapore. And I'm quite sad about that, honestly. And I want to be honest with our viewers, because that's why we have this podcast, and we don't want to pretend any other. So for me, the things just didn't gel. I don't think the performances were engaging. I don't think the script was quite ready. And it just didn't transfer to a Singapore stage in the way that I think maybe they would have hoped. So yeah, for me, this is not one of my favorite pieces of theatre I've seen in Singapore recently.
Well, there you are then, ladies and gentlemen. Regrettably, a misfire for us, but then again, you can't win them all.
However, in terms of collaborations, a collaboration that SRT is doing soon that I'm super excited about is their production of BFG.
Roald Dahl?
Roald Dahl. I am so excited because this is a collaboration with Royal Shakespeare Company and Chichester Theatre Festival, which are just absolutely amazing British producers. So I am so excited for this production, and I had a chat with Gaurav about it, and I cannot wait to see that. So that is coming our way in April next year.
Marvelous.
So SRT, that is exactly the sort of production that I'm super excited by. So can't wait for that.
Fabulous. Well, my tea's on cold, love. Shall we leave it there?
Absolutely.
So that's cheerio from us. We'll be back soon.
And it's hurrah from me.
And to the cast and crew of Congratulations, Get Rich.
And to anyone performing in Singapore theatre,
Break a leg.